Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have some very important news out of the state of Michigan surrounding the 2026 Michigan governor's race. And this is that Mike Duggan, the current mayor of the city of Detroit, who is running an independent campaign for governor, has officially ended his bid. I'm getting this information from the Detroit Free Press. They go into detail here that on Thursday, May 21st, in a surprising move, former Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan is ending his independent bid to become Michigan's next governor. His departure from the race is another signal that independent candidates face steep paths to winning statewide elections in Michigan. Duggan cited internal polling and said, quote, networks of national party money in an announcement to supporters that he sent out Thursday morning. Saying, quote, if we were even in the polls and behind in fundraising, we have a path to winning. If we were behind in the polls and even in fundraising, we have a path, but we're behind in both. I no longer feel good about our chances to win, Duggan said in a statement. So Duggan dropping out of the race is very significant and plays a very significant role for the general election. Michigan, there are currently 9 governor's races that I currently have as considered to be toss-up, which is anything that's going to be, I think, a 5-point margin of victory or under as of today, and Michigan is one of those states. Now, Michigan, if you're familiar with the state, has been one of the most perennially close battleground states at the presidential level the last 3 presidential elections. President Trump won it in 2024 by 1.4%. Joe Biden won it in 2020 by 2.8%. And in 2016, Donald Trump won it by 0.22%. So the last 3 presidential elections, it's been super close. In 2012, obviously before Donald Trump, Obama versus Romney, Obama won it by 9.5%. On the Senate level, it's also been very competitive as well. It voted for the Democrat Lisa Slotkin over the Republican Mike Rogers by 0.34% in 2024. The next Senate race before that took place in 2020. This was Democratic incumbent Gary Peters, who his Senate race is also up in 2026. He is not running for re-election. But in this race, John James, a name you're going to be hearing later on in the video, lost this race to Gary Peters by only 1.7%. on the same ballot when Trump lost Michigan by 2.8. So a very close Senate race in 2020. And then in 2018, in the President Trump's first term in his midterm election, the Democrat Senator Debbie Stabenow defeated same John James by 6.5%. On the governor's side, the current governor of the state of Michigan is Gretchen Whitmer, and Whitmer won re-election in 2022 by 10.5%. This was the midterm election during Joe Biden's first term as president, or only term as president, and Whitmer won by 10.5%, a likely Democratic rating, using the margin scale of 15 and over being safe, 5 to 15 being likely, 5 to 1 being lean, and then 1 and under being tilt. So Whitmer won re-election by 10.5%. She also won in 2018, her first term, in the Trump midterm by 9.6% over the Republican Bill Schwett. So this race for 2026 is an interesting race because it's taking place in a midterm year, which President Trump's current approval ratings, you'll see here, Trump is not polling all too strongly. I'll just refresh here to make sure it's up to date. President Trump is now at 38.1% approval to disapproval at 59.1%, 59.10% here. What this means is Trump is now over 20 points negative in the net approval ratings. As for the generic congressional ballot for 2026, Democrats are also doing very strongly right now, with them at 46%, Republicans at 39.3%. So the Democrats are in a very strong position for the midterms, and Republicans are essentially in free fall at this very moment. In Michigan's governor's race, in a state that's decided at most in the presidential level by 3 points or less in the last 3 presidential elections, suggests it's a state that in a Donald Trump midterm, Democrats should be very well poised to potentially win. Now, what's interesting about this governor's race is it wasn't for sure a Democratic win, though the Democrats were favored due to Mike Duggan being in the race. We know who the Democrat candidate is likely going to be. Jocelyn Benson, the Michigan Secretary of State, is the most notable Democratic candidate in this race. Even the Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist dropped out of the race and is not running for Michigan Secretary of State because he knew there was no pathway to victory against Benson in the Democratic primary. On the Republican side, there are 3, if not even 4, really notable Republicans running in Mike Cox, John James, who, as I mentioned, was the Republican nominee for Senate in 2018 and 2020, Perry Johnson, the 2024 Republican presidential candidate, and Eric Nesbitt, the minority leader of the Michigan Senate. The polling on this has been at different stages competitive, but John James has been the leader in most of the polls that have been taken since he announced that he was running in this race. The current race to the White House polling average, he's leading at 30.1%. Perry Johnson is behind him at 19.7%, still with 35.6% undecided, so it's possible James would not win the primary, but Michigan, I do believe, just doesn't have a runoff rule. Whoever has the most votes wins in this primary, so it looks like John James will be the Republican candidate. Now, when Mike Duggan, the former mayor of Detroit, ran as an independent, there was some discourse about would he impact the Democrats more or the Republicans more. You would have different arguments. Democrats would say that as an independent, he would also get a good amount of Republicans too. Republicans would argue he's the former mayor of Detroit. Detroit is the overwhelmingly Democratic area. He'd be more likely to get more support from the Democrats there. The truth is a little bit of both, because he definitely, when you look at the hypothetical polling, Mike Duggan was clearly getting a good amount of support from really a lot of people here. So the most prominent polling matchup that we had was Benson versus James versus Mike Duggan. This is where most of the polls came from. This is what the likeliest matchup has been. And in the final polling averages before Duggan withdrew his campaign, Benson was at 35.4%, John James was at 30.5%, but Mike Duggan, as the independent, was getting 20.7%. That's a very significant number for a third-party candidate to get. So you can't say Duggan is getting 30.7% without at least acknowledging that he's pulling a good amount of support from both the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, Jocelyn Benson, the Democrat, is still leading at 35.4%. There's still also roughly 13.4% of the vote undecided. But just look at the numbers from the Gretchen Whitmer races, say in 2018, where she got 53%, and in the 22 race, where she also got a little bit more than that at 54.5%. So when you look at these numbers here, if all those undecided went to Jocelyn Benson, she would get up to about 48%. If John James won all the undecided votes, he'd get up to about 43%. So Mike Duggan is clearly at 20.7%, it goes without saying, was polling a significant amount of vote from both the Democrats and the Republicans. And now that he's withdrawn from the race, the argument of is he polling more from the Democrats or Republicans essentially is mute. It doesn't really matter now, because now it becomes a two-way race between Jocelyn Benson and John James, where Mike Duggan's 20.7% is going to have to go somewhere, and the undecided or other vote, the 13.4%. So combining here with the 0.7 and the 0.4, you're looking at roughly like 34% of the vote now either up for grabs or potentially going to be split between Benson and John James heading into this election cycle. So we're not going to know for sure until more polling comes out. The most recent poll we did have, though, from Mitchell Research at the beginning of May had Benson at 42, James at 30, Duggan at 13, and 15% undecided. I would bet of the 13% that Duggan has, not all of it is going to go to James for him to take the lead. Not all of it's going to go to Benson. I wouldn't be shocked if it's close to an even split of, say, like 7% goes maybe to John James, 6% goes to Benson, or something along those lines. It's going to be an interesting governor's race now that Benson and James appears to be the likely general election matchup. We've already seen some movement here on the rankings. As of May 21st, which is today, the day I'm recording this video, Cook Political Report has updated their predictions. They shifted it from toss-up now to lean Democrat. So they do still have it competitive, but a race that Democrats are certainly favored in. Again, showing you the recent election history for a 2026 midterm election environment. Michigan, it did vote for Donald Trump by 1.4%, but now with Trump's approval ratings down at 38.1%. And on top of that, Gretchen Whitmer winning the governor's race by roughly about 9 points, or about 10.5%, in 2022. And then in 2018, where she won it by 9.6%. Forecasting the governor's race in Michigan is going to be interesting, because I think it's certainly possible that it is a lean Democratic win, which would be 5 points or under. It's also possible, I think it's over 5 points. It even could potentially, if it was a big enough Democratic wave, exceed 10 points, though I think somewhere in the 5 to 10 range is more likely as of now. So I think Michigan's governor's race would probably be just a hair over 5 points for Benson versus John James right now, until we get more polling to confirm this. Yes, Donald Trump's approval rating is badly, but Michigan did also just vote for him in 2024 without Gretchen Whitmer the top of the ticket. As the incumbent, it is technically an open race, though I think Jocelyn Benson is still favored over John James in this race. So I would probably start this out around like a 5.5 to 6-point win for Benson over John James right now. Something akin to like 52-46 in terms of overall percentages, maybe 51-45, something along those lines. It's just not a very good election environment for John James or any Republican candidate to try and win when Trump is down by over 20 points and Republicans are losing the generic ballot by near 7 points. It's not a good election environment to be in. John James is also giving up his House seat, which is, I believe, just north of the Detroit area, to run for this race, a House seat that he won in 2024 by 6 points, but won in 2022 by less than half a percentage point. So that race alone may be a potential Democratic win as well in this election environment. So this news about Mike Duggan is very significant. In terms who it benefits more, I would say it benefits the Democrats more in Jocelyn Benson, because though I do think Duggan was pulling a good amount of support from both the Democrats and the Republicans, I think the automatic shift from Cook Political Report from toss-up to lean Democrat does at very least suggest that it probably gives the Democrats a stronger chance at winning here. As again, Mike Duggan being the former mayor of Detroit, I do think is going to siphon away a good amount of Democratic votes in Detroit and maybe the surrounding counties as well. So I do think Duggan dropping out does ultimately benefit the Democrats slightly more than it does the Republicans. Both the Cook Political Report agrees with that. Also, the latest updated Kalshi odds do agree with it as well. Before I recorded this video, I didn't refresh the page yet. The governor's race was listed at 63% to go Democrat. That would be a lean Democratic ranking. Now in the updated odds, it's now at 83% for the Democrats to win in Michigan, now a likely Democratic ranking. So clearly this noise, the political prediction site, Cook Political Report, and the Kalshi election odds, people still agree that this race, with Mike Duggan not in it, gives the Democrats a stronger chance at winning. Does it mean John James couldn't per se win this race? No, I think John James could potentially win, but like the 17% on the Kalshi odds suggest, it's certainly a lot more of an uphill battle, and I think it's a race the Democrats more times than not would probably win this race, and given the election environment of 2026, I would expect them to win by a pretty decent amount of at least over 5 points as of right now. But I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. Leave all your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please remember to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos from me in the future. I do have some exciting stuff coming out over the next few weeks, including a video where I looked at all the Senate and governor races with the Kalshi odds and assigned those ratings to the states. Now, obviously, Michigan in that video, I had already done. Mike Duggan was still in that race, so that lean Democratic ranking in that video is now going to be likely Democratic. That's going to be the only notable change, though, as obviously I didn't know this news was happening, but the video's already scheduled to go up, so I'm sure there'll be comments saying that Duggan dropped out, this is out of date, but just know that lean Democratic ranking will now be a likely Democratic ranking. But still, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, please remember to like and subscribe if you did, and I hope to see you in a future video.